like to call the Select Board hearing to order and welcome everybody and thank you for coming. Before we actually start, I'd just like to explain some procedures here. This is not a Select Board meeting. This is a hearing of the Select Board is having a hearing on the town plan. And we expect, as we indicated before, that if you have any changes, they need to be in writing, they need to be specific to the page, to the document that we're going to deal with, so that we can understand what you don't like or what you do want to change in the town plan. We can't have suggestions and we can't have comments on what I don't like the plan. That doesn't fly. There has to be specifics. When we're going to put a 2-hour time limit on tonight's meeting. If it goes past 2 hours, then we'll call another hearing. After the meeting, the Select Board will then have a regular scheduled meeting to approve any of the changes if there are changes to be made. And then there'll be another hearing on October 7th, if the Select Board approves that. November 7th, for the final plan, if that does work. I'd like to say that for comments, please keep them short. Everyone needs to speak, so if you have a comment, let everybody else speak, and then you can speak again. Please, I don't think I have to say this, but I know that there's some very heated issues here, and I would like everybody to keep civil. We're trying to do the best we can. We want to get this plan done. It's been 5 years in the making. The first hearing didn't go well, so let's try to get this thing going so the town can have a town plan. Okay?
I have a question.
Yeah.
If a person has a laundry list of questions or changes, are you going to let that person go through the laundry list, or are you going to ask them to prioritize and give you their most important change so that one person doesn't dominate the conversation?
We can only deal with one issue at a time. So if you have a laundry list, you have 5 in, we'll do with the first one, and then we do the second one. The Select Board will then discuss the change or the possible change. We can take a straw vote, but it's not a binding vote. The binding vote will be after the hearing is adjourned and we go into our Select Board's meeting, which will be shortly, right after this. So we can't deal with 5 different things. We have to deal with, if you have 5 issues, let's deal with issue number 1, and then we'll move on.
That's part of my question, that the board needs to deal with them one by one. But the other part of my question is, if one person has a long list, do they give you the highest priority question or comment they have? We deal with that and then let somebody else speak so that it's not dominated by somebody that has a long list.
I don't know, how does the board want to handle that?
Yeah, I think it'd be good if it sort of went around the room and then sort of went back to an individual, as opposed to, I think that's a good point.
If we could let everyone speak like
And
we
then
do
go
in
back
town
to-
meeting and then go back.
Exactly.
Right, that's fine.
Everyone's had their
That's
say.
fine with me. Okay. Does anybody have anything they want to say from the board? Okay, so we need a motion to adopt the agenda.
So moved.
So, second.
Do we have any changes? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay. Any opposed? Okay. All right, so you will all have the paperwork here. You have the agenda, you have the revisions, you have all that kind of stuff here. So I guess for the sake of discussion, we have the first issue we have to deal with is a request by Lisa Kissel. And go ahead.
I think the first thing you want to deal with is, do you want to accept John Bennett's edits?
Oh, you're
or
right.
not?
I'm sorry.
I mean, then
You're
we
right.
can.
You're right. Okay, I don't remember. Did not remember that. Okay. We have Stan and I and Chris had some discussions, not as a board member, as individuals, about this town plan. And I was very concerned as the chair that this hot topic of the wind, and which to me is not a hot topic, but it is to certain people. We need to deal with this so that we can move along with the plan. It's been so long that we still don't have a town plan, and we need to get going. I know that there are certain people in this room here who want to proceed with village designation, and that can't happen. There are other things that need to happen. So I had asked Bill to reach out to Wyndham Regional to see if they could come up with some changes in language that could be accepted by the board and by the residents of town. And as a result, we got a letter from Bill Bennett, John Bennett, who is the Wyndham Regional guy. And I'll read it to you, and it says, Bill, after our conversations and reviewing the revised edition of the plan attached, incorporating the changes provided October 7th and October 9th that restored critical components necessary to satisfy the statutory requirements regarding energy planning standard for municipalities and the flood-resistant plan element of the town plan. Respectively, it appears that the draft contains adequate material on those points to earn approval of the plan and the determination of energy compliance. Please bear in mind that this is a staff opinion, and ultimately those decisions are voted by the commission. So I guess the board needs to accept John Bennett's position here. Don't all speak at once.
I'll make a motion that the board accept the recommendations and changes edited by John Bennett of the Wyndham Regional Commission.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, discussion?
Mr. Chairman, is it possible for us to comment, since this is not a meeting?
Sure.
Okay, thank you. I just thought it might be a little confusing. It sounded as if the changes to the plan were made by John Bennett. That is not the case. As I understand it, Bill compiled them at the request of yourself and the vice chair. And I just thought that process should be really clear to people. Okay.
The issue that we spoke about was how do we come to a compromise on the wind issue? Okay, only. And John Bennett is commenting on the energy plan revision only. And this is John Bennett came up with the language for the plan, as I understand it. It didn't come from us. Sorry, can you?
I wanted to make sure that we got plan approved, and that I wanted to be sure that there was we got substantial deference before the PUC. That was my most important goal for the town. I thought that because when we are before the PUC, if our energy plan gets substantial deference, then we have a lot of say on generation of power, commercial generation of power, when the projects go before the PUC. And so I was in discussion with John Bennett about that, and he sent me an outline. Well, the outline then indicated that I needed to put back in the language that that the Wyndham Regional had helped him write with regard to the energy plan. And then he also, but he was reviewing the whole plan to see if it was 4302 compliant. 4302 has 14 different things. One of them is energy, and one of them is resiliency. He felt that the changes I had made, basically going back to much of the Planning Commission's language, would bring the energy into compliance with that, and we have a good chance of getting substantial deference. I say good chance because as he says in his email, he doesn't control it. The commission controls it by committee. There are standards, but it's up to them. And then in the midst of that, we were discussing the flood resiliency, and he showed me where we needed to change the language back to what the Wyndham Regional had suggested be in the flood resiliency chapter, because 43AD2, I think, or 4383 in certain sections required that we recognize whether or not we want river corridor in our regs. We have to recognize the river corridor, recognize that they are near the river and have a chance of being dangerous to people building in there, and then we can say we will study them and do that, but we have to recognize them. So I had to put that language back in. So the language that you will see in that is crossed out and underlined in the resiliency chapter 71 to 74 in copies you have in front of you if you have them, and in the energy chapter 28 to 45, the changes you'll see were the changes that were put back in to get substantial difference in energy, to be more restrictive on wind, and to get us past the state law requirements for flood resiliency. And then John Bennett then finished his review, because he had reviewed, and those were his two gigs. Those two things were the things he didn't think were correct. He finished his review after those changes were made, and the words considered by me, then he said that that language then meets the requirements as far as staff at the WRC goes. So that's what those changes are. And those changes are between, I think it's 71 and 74 and 28 and 45 in your plan. And for the select board and for some people who are lucky, there is a page, there's a thing I set around that is just those pages, and it shows they're in the red color. If you have the large plan, it's underlined. And if this computer ever starts working right, I can show both those things. If you didn't understand, this thing went into update, and I can't shut it off. Unless somebody knows how to shut it off and get it back on. If you can do that, I'll do it in a minute.
So does that satisfy you, Valerie?
I'm Anna.
I mean, I'm sorry.
That's okay. Received an email that Bill sent out maybe a week ago or so ago. He sent it out to about 70 people. I don't know if you were all on the list.
Probably the same as you.
And I don't have it in front of me, but essentially what I understood Bill to be saying is that he had inserted back into his proposal that the select board was going to be sympathetic to passages of the original draft of the Planning Commission, and that those passages were primarily coming from the original draft of the energy chapter and the flood resiliency chapter. I don't believe that Bill Bennett wrote those things. Our Planning Commission did. And I just want that to be very clear. John Bennett, John Bennett, I understand, guided because he follows a certain list of requirements that the state sets. But the changes in the plan are going back to what the Planning Commission prepared under the direction of the Wyndham Regional Commission right at the outset. I just think it's important to be clear.
All right, so we have a motion on the floor and we have a second. Any further discussion? So all in favor of the motion, say yes. Aye.
All right.
Aye.
Opposed?
And again, that has to be voted on at the meeting. This is just to get a sense of the board.
Right. Are you abstaining? Okay, and one abstention. Okay, 4-1. Okay. Okay, so now let's get on with the hearing. The first one we have, I know that there's others, but the first request is Lisa Kissel and Lisa Kissel wants the plan to go back to the original plan presented by the Planning Commission, not the edited version. Is that correct, Lisa?
So, I guess I may speak. It seems like several changes were just made that go back to the original Planning Commission's plan, as Anna and others have already pointed out. However, not everything. So therefore, language is not consistent throughout, and it's very important that the plan is internally consistent, that everything supports everything else that's stated. And it seems to be logical to go back to the entire Planning Commission version, also in the interest of time, rather than go back word by word, sentence by sentence, check is this consistent with that. We know that the original Planning Commission plan was already seen and developed in conjunction with the Wyndham Regional Commission. They know the document, they know it's compliant with the law, they know it's internally consistent. There is nothing there except maybe a few technical errors that have been caught later that require a major change. So the interest of expedient process and making fast, coming to a faster resolution on this, it would seem to be a good solution in the interest of town to go back to that version, rather than go back sentence by sentence, paragraph by paragraph.
I guess in the overall scope of things, as far as I'm concerned, I personally don't have a particular problem with that. I mean, there are issues, as you just indicated, that would need correction in the original plan. I mean, I went through the plan that was adopted by the select board a couple of weeks ago, and I maybe had more issues with it than I had with the original plan. So, I mean, I have a lot of minor issues with it, but I think that if the original plan, as we go back to it, were to include Skip Lyle's report in it, I think that's a wonderful report. I think it has a lot of great information, although I personally don't think it should be part and parcel of the town plan. I think it should be indicated. If a piece of it is used, it should reference that report, but I just don't think it should be part of the town plan. I mean, the original town plan has a lot of little oddities to it. I mean, there's no such thing as the Three Sisters or whatever that is. I mean, those little rivers have names, and they're not related to each other through birth or whatever. So, I mean, there's a lot of little technical things in there. Again, I don't have the overall concept to it. I didn't find anything terribly wrong with the original plan. So that's what I have to say.
I will speak up. I did not like the original version of the energy plan, and I would not vote for it. I tried very hard with Bill and to urge everybody to come to some kind of compromise, and as far as I'm concerned, I can live with the compromise. I can't live with the return. So if that's the case, I will not vote for change of the plan back to the original.
It would be really helpful, since we really haven't had a hearing, where the townspeople could understand the rationale behind the select board's thinking. It would be really helpful, Mr. Chair, if you could specify what you don't like about the energy chapter.
Very simple. It's very simple, Lisa. I was elected here not to serve certain groups or individuals. I was here to serve the town. Whatever this plan ends up to be tonight or future dates, I have to make sure this plan meets approval from Wyndham Regional, the PUC, for the future. And if there's any doubt whatsoever, I cannot approve this plan, because I don't know what's going to happen to this plan. It lasts for 8 years, maybe it'll last sooner if they revise it. But if something in this town happens again, like we had with the Iberdrola situation, and the plan doesn't cut its mustard, and the PUC throws it out, I don't want to be responsible. So I can only vote for something that I feel that I can support. I'm able to change my vision now because of what John Bennett had said, but that's as far as I'm going to go, period.
So, the approval by the Wyndham Regional Commission and by the PUC served as the guideline for the planning commission throughout. The planning commission has been more than well aware of the requirements for the town to get substantial difference. That has been the #1 guideline in the energy policy, writing of it. So there is nothing in the planning commission's plan that would cast any shadow over its compliance, its approvability, by, if there's such a word, in front of the PUC. That is clear. That is what the planning commission did. That was really our #1 principle in drafting the energy chapter. And as I said, it was done very closely working together with the energy planners at Wyndham Regional Commission, who have to approve it and make sure that it's compliant with the law. So there's nothing questionable about that document, nothing.
That's your opinion, you asked me mine, I gave you mine.
May I interject? What you say implies that there's something specific that you think cannot be approved. What is that?
I go by what Mr. Bennett says. He says it's okay. That's what I want.
I'm not familiar with a lot of this.
Okay, well, I gave you my reasons, and I don't have to explain any further than that. John?
I'd like to know the answer to that as well. You know, I heard you say earlier, and I believe you, that you're here to represent the entire town. If there's something that you personally, as a chairperson, do not like about the energy chapter, and we're here to be transparent and serve the entire town, then I think you need to be responsible for yourself, and at least be willing to discuss what that might be.
The changes, what the changes are, I can live with. That's my answer, period.
The question that hit the floor was, what is it that you cannot accept in the energy plan? Because going to all the planning commission meetings and looking at the work with the Wyndham Regional, they did work hand in hand to make sure that that plan met compliance.
Maybe,
So I'm really interested to know,
I gave you
what
my,
is it that you have discovered that we didn't understand?
I gave you my reasoning. I don't like the language in the original plan. It's been modified. I can live with that, and I will vote for that.
Well, we'll never know what the problem is.
Maybe not.
Well, can I speak?
Sure.
I like the original plan. I've always liked the original plan. I did not like it when all the edits happened, because I wasn't part of the edits. I think the Planning Commission as a whole, Dave Culver, did a superior job. I believe Lisa is correct in saying that you did meet all those guidelines, because it was approved by the Wyndham Regional and the state. I did not like the fact that certain information was taken out of the plan. That was historical events that happened when that plan was written, and a lot of it was over the wind and the vote. I'd like to see the plan pass. I believe the plan is a working document. It's going to change. It's going to change in the future. It can change with other events that happen historical to our town. So I feel it's a working document that's going to be changing. And it has to change to meet the needs of the people.
Any other comments? Well, since we don't have we cannot make a formal motion, because this is just a working session. Would somebody like to make a motion that either we accept or reject Lisa's request? And then we can have a final vote when we go to the meeting. But we need to do something. We can't, either we have to say yes or no.
Can we go through those and then make the motion at the
Well,
regular meeting?
you can, but it's going to get complicated because you're going to have many, many, many different changes here, as I understand it, and I think you should deal with each one at a time. If it's up to the board, however you want to handle it. Yes, Bill?
Whatever you do tonight is not final.
No.
You have at least one more hearing. If you change that hearing, you have another hearing. If you change that hearing, you have another hearing. This can go on all year. So whatever you do tonight, you can still let it.
Because if you do that, you don't have to do the rest.
Well, that's true. No. If you accept the original plan, then you don't have to do anything else. I agree with you.
No, you do. You have to have another meeting.
No, I'm saying
no.
on the list of the letters that we've got, there were some requests of changes to be made on the plan that the select board's already adopted. So if we go with this motion to the affirmative, then we don't really have to, because they don't relate back to the original plan.
Basically, what Lisa was saying, we go back to the original plan, and then we go home. That's in essence.
Well, wait, isn't it on the table that we accept the edits that Bill and John Bennett made?
Yes.
We just did.
We accept those edit, but that doesn't necessarily mean, Lisa is asking for the board to forget John's language and go back to the original plan. That's what she's asking. Okay? So, in order for us to handle the next request, we need to have a vote here. Now, it's a non-binding vote because we have to have the same vote again when we have an official select board meeting. But we just can't leave it hanging, so either it has to be a consensus unless somebody wants to pass the motion. I'm not quite sure what you need to do, but we have to respond to Lisa's request. Excuse me, Al.
Sure.
But it seems like if we already are considering what Bill and John wrote, right?
Mhm.
If we're going to go with that.
Then you vote against this.
Then you take one before you take the second. Or am I wrong?
I guess I'm confused.
Well, it sounded to me like people were in favor of accepting, some were in favor of accepting what John Bennett and Bill wrote.
Right, but that's on the select board amended plan.
Correct. And so.
But this relates back to the original plan.
Correct, but if you accept that, then after you accept that, then you're gonna change your mind and go back to the original?
You're not,
Not
I don't
changing.
see, you're not changing your mind, you're just saying because you've got, you're talking about two different plans. On the select board, the way I'm looking at it is the select board adopted plan, those are where John Bennett's comments were. Okay, so that's a different thing from what the original plan was. I think they're two entirely different.
Okay. Valerie?
Not Valerie.
Anna, sorry.
That's okay. Anna Vesely-Pula, maybe more words will help. But I guess I'd like to ask each and every member of the board, if I may, there seems to be like factual problem here. The original draft that our planning commission prepared has been already declared legal and worthy of, what's the term, please?
Substantial difference.
Thank you. So that in those aspects, it is entirely equal to this modified version. And I'd just like to be sure that each and every one of you, before you take any kind of a vote, understand that. You're not voting for a plan that protects the town as opposed to one that does not. They both protect the town legally and in front of the Public Utilities Commission. They both do it. And that's just a fact.
I fully understand that, but I like the edited version better, period.
That's cool, but I just want everybody to be clear on the legality issue.
Then it's okay, that's how I understand it. Yes.
Is it
Francis.
my understanding, I'm Francis Oliver,
Yes,
is it
Francis.
my understanding that the revised version had a bunch of deletions in it?
Yeah, but it's been revised again. I don't know if you have the copy of the.
Yes, I did.
We're only talking about the energy plan now.
There were no deletions in the energy plan?
Well, there were, but then these things were put back in again.
So were those?
I didn't say all of them. Things were
Okay.
put back in.
I guess what I'm wondering is if that's what you seem to have some sort of an issue you don't like, but I'm very confused about what that is besides maybe just punctuation marks and stuff.
Well, I think this, Lisa's asking a very simple question. She doesn't like the new version. She wants to return back to the old version, okay?
Yeah.
So we have to make a decision here. The select board needs to make a decision so we can move on, whether they want to say yes or no to Lisa's request. That's very simple, yes.
You're talking about the entire plan, not the
Oh, I
energy
understand that.
chapter. Okay, I
But-
just want to make,
Right.
if you
and-
guys
and
make a
if you-
motion, I want to know what
and
I'm
if you
taking down
accept-
there.
If you accept Lisa's, let's call it an amendment, or whatever you want to call it, then it's over, because then the entire plan, and there's no discussion. You're going back to the original plan, as I understand it.
Okay, I just want to make sure.
Yeah, and I think that's
understood
what
for
Stan is
minutes,
trying to
okay.
make the picture. So you have to, we don't have to move, but if you don't move forward and you go through all these others and then you go back to Lisa's and you vote for her, then you wasted all this time. That's my point. So,
Can we just get a sense of how the board feels
well, I'm
about it?
asking, if somebody wants to make a motion. It's a non-binding motion. Remember, we can change this at the meeting, but we need to move forward, and if you want to pass on it, we can pass on it, but we need to get some sense of how you feel about, I'll make the motion if you want, but I don't care.
Now, I make the motion that we go back to the original plan with the understanding that starting basically from day one on the acceptance of the original plan, that changes are made based on what the planning commission would like to see in it.
Bill?
You can't bind future select boards to any of that. What you want to do is either adopt it or don't adopt it.
I make a motion, we adopt.
The what, Lisa's motion?
Yes.
So we're adopting
The original plan.
December 2018 plan as presented by the select board in January, and then formally presented on February 21st of 2019. Okay, I want to be specific.
The planning commission
The
version.
planning commission version presented to the select board in February 2019.
Okay, and again, just for the dates, I have what I think is an original, and it says printed on February 4th, 2009.
That's correct, that's the one.
Do we have a second to this motion?
I'll second it.
Okay. Do we have any discussion from the board?
Yeah. When I read the cover letter to that, and I have to say, I understand this process has been a long process. There's been a lot of turnover on both the select board and the planning commission. When I used to work for the state, it used to bother me when people made general statements, the state did this, the state did that. Often it boiled down to a department did this or a department did that, or even an individual did this or that. But it got classified as the state, and if you work for the state, you were as guilty as everybody else. So I'm a little respectful of the idea that there's been a lot of change on both boards. It's taken a long time. But when I read the cover letter of January 31st from the Planning Commission report on the town plan update, when it says the town plan update was completed over multiple years during which time many of these meetings were well attended by Grafton citizens. I have a little trouble with that. For a certain group to continue to turn out at a meeting and you hear from that group over and over again is not the same as hearing from the whole town and hearing input from everybody in town. There was at least 7 people that I can think of that have been, call it what you want, and I know people are going to gasp, but there are people that were on the planning commission that were either intimidated off from it, bullied off from it, or for one reason or another, they are no longer on the planning commission. Those people's voice have not been heard. And when I read things in the town plan that, to me, reflects more of what you can't do in town instead of a vision of what you can do in town, I have a problem with that. I'll use a couple examples. One of the things when they talk about the Three Sisters and the classification of water out there, to me, that water is in good condition because people have managed the land and done their timber sales and their operations correctly. But instead of recognizing the people that have done that and taken care of their land so there is good water, we want to write additional requirements or stipulations, which very much seems to be targeted towards meadows and timberland. The unfortunate thing is when we do that, we also, the collateral damage comes to people like the plumbers and the Wrights out in the valley that are sugar makers. When they want to do a sugaring spraying for forest tent caterpillar like they have done in the past, and they'll use Bacillus thuringiensis, they'll have a harder time getting a permit because of that water quality standard that we've imposed on them to try and make it more difficult for anything that should happen at MTL. That sort of thing, I think there's been a rush to write tight restrictions on MTL and a wind project that shouldn't even be considered anymore. That project is gone. MTL's not pursuing it. The Iberdrola did what they said once the vote was over. I think people are championing a cause that has come and gone. And I think there's people falling to collateral damage because of that. When I look at the classifications of land, and my land is classified because it's in the western part of town as if it's some kind of special piece of land. It's land I love. Land I've worked on for 40 years. But it's second growth timber that's come in after the sheep farming. I have ash yellows already on the property, and when I go and work the land, I work now reclaiming of pasture, I remove 7 invasive species, but yet the classification of land says that that's a special category of land. There's things in that plan that are written, to me, that are written for a purpose, and it's to make life difficult for MTL. And when we talk about the importance of agriculture and forestry, we say how important it is, that's our roots of our town, and then when we really write about it, there's less than a paragraph about what are we going to do to promote good forestry. People don't seem to understand that in order to have good active forestry, you have to thin the forest. You have to have a market for low-grade product, the crap that you cut out of the woods. You have to have some place to sell it for the forester to be able to manage that woodlot. And we don't talk about biomass, we don't talk about cogeneration, we don't talk about any of that stuff. And I'm sorry, but I've had to hold back. I've been not allowed to participate. I was asked by my peers to help write this plan, but yet the past Planning Commission voted 5-1 to put Al Sands on there so I could help write the plan. 1 vote against, and the select board at that time went with the 1 vote. Those 5 people that were on that, now there is only 1 left on that Planning Commission. Those people have been silenced. When they came to the town and asked, why did you do that? it doesn't matter how long you've lived in town. We're in charge now. Those people no longer participate in these discussions. And so I have a problem when you write a plan that has a single purpose in mind. Sorry.
Any other comments? Valerie? Yes.
So I just checked with the chair of the planning commission to make sure I'm not misunderstanding anything, but we actually had no discussion about the issues you raised. We had no thought about the issues you raised. We'd be happy to entertain any language that anybody introduced about those issues. We are all in support of anybody doing foresting and or maple sugaring, and so if there's specific language you want changed in the planning commission's version, we'd be happy to hear it. And I mean that wholeheartedly, and I'm sure I speak for the entire planning commission, and at least the ones who are here, because I did a little reality check while I was here.
I have to apologize because I understand the planning commission now is not the same planning commission that was there before. But when people tried to participate and they were not allowed to participate, it doesn't take too much of that before people don't participate.
So I think we can only move forward, we can't go backwards. And right this minute, we worked hard on a consensus document, we hold lots of public meetings, we asked for input. I'm disturbed by the fact that some people on the select board currently won't speak to what their concerns are or make specific suggestions, but just want to throw it out. So again, we'd be happy to hear anything that would make it better. We tried to be in compliance with the state's recommendations and had no actual personal agendas enter into this, and certainly nothing that was anti-timbering. It never even came up.
When the select board was asked to make comments and they sent comments to the planning commission, the response we got was these were individual comments. There was no meeting. This was not a vote of the
That's not quite accurate. There were
select board.
things sent from the select board that were not identified as individuals. There was no public meeting about it, so it could not be select board.
Look, we're getting off the topic.
But no, it's important because instead of saying, let's hear what you have to say and the invitation, come please and share with you, in my mind, it was written off as this was not done at a vote. It wasn't a majority. Therefore, we don't have to listen to it. Whether that was your intent or not, that's how it came to me.
What stopped you from submitting comments individually or sending a letter to the select board, to the planning commission? I'm not clear on, because we certainly welcome everybody else's comments.
Okay, but-
Incorporated any of them.
All right, look,
So thank you.
we have an issue on the table here to, there's a motion on the table to accept the original plan presented to the select board by the planning commission in February of
February 4th.
of 18?
No, it was 19.
19.
February 4th, 19.
So any other comments from the board on that comment? Okay. All right, so all in favor of going back to the original plan, say aye.
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 Opposed?
Opposed.
So we have 3-1, so we go back to the original plan. Okay, so there's no need to have a hearing anymore. It's all over. So, yes,
Questions?
There's actually an item that does appear in the original plan that I believe needs to be addressed. May I speak to that? It's very specific,
Say the page and number so we can.
and that's exactly what I have. I'm prepared. In the energy chapter,
Page?
it is under, it's on page 45, recommendation for action, part 6, line E and F.
What page?
45. I have it. I pulled this off of the town website today, so there seems to be a lot of versions of the plan floating out there. So I hope you.
There's only one original version.
Okay, well okay, then the page numbers might be different, but in the energy plan, where it says recommendation for action, that's still the same.
Yep, what number?
Okay, section 6, energy generation and distribution.
Yep.
And I have it as E and F. In the original plan, it might be D.
This is E and F.
Okay.
Or E, well, depending what you have.
Okay. All right.
E is,
In the original plan, E says discourage utility scale, commercial scale wind energy generation. Okay. The immediate next statement, F, is in stark conflict. It says encourage any potential commercial generation facilities to be within the areas deemed most suitable. I believe those two statements are in conflict of each other. And I have recommendations for a change now, the way I have written this is a little bit, I didn't know that you would, as a board, vote to go back to the original plan. So,
Nobody did, so it's okay.
okay, but I'm just saying, this was written not knowing that you would do that. But and I have copies of this, I'll give it to you. Line E, if it's going to stay as discourage utility scale and commercial scale wind energy generation, I suggest that line F read, consider potential residential and small scale commercial generation facilities to be within the areas deemed most suitable. The rest is the same. I think I think the contradiction could lead to problems down the line when on E we're saying discourage and F we're saying encourage any. Do you follow what I'm seeing there?
yeah, but at this point, what you're gonna have to do, I think, that,
I have one copy of this.
and this would go back to the planning commission, this was something you'd wanna discuss with the planning commission.
No, we can make the
We can-
change now.
Oh,
We can.
yeah, okay.
We can make the change right now, and then, and we adopt it when we come out to the regular meeting. There's no issue, that's what we can do, I think, Bill, correct?
Any change you want,
Yeah,
is it gonna give you substantial difference?
that I don't know.
See, you're talking about two different things here. You're talking about no wind generation, but other generations you're gonna allow in the areas where it's allowed. For instance, this would say the solar field down there couldn't come in, the way I heard his thing. Even in areas where we want a solar field, we couldn't put it, a commercial solar field, because we don't want it. You've got to allow for some generation. Planning commission, you guys know all this stuff, you tell me. You gotta allow for some generation in order to get substantial difference. If you cut it off completely, you're dead. You're not gonna get substantial difference.
And I personally wouldn't vote for any changes if we're gonna lose substantial deference or whatever. This plan has to cut the
That's what I'm
mustard.
concerned about, so I don't know.
It's not my intention to lose, substantial difference, but however, do you see what I'm seeing there? Those two statements, I believe, are in conflict of each other.
Well, I think what
So
you're
maybe
saying
my
is-
suggested wording could be different from what I have suggested.
What you have to pay attention to is the last part of that. Encourage any potential commercial generation facility to be within areas deemed where we want them.
Okay.
That's the important part. It isn't that we're encouraging all generation, it's to be in areas where they're deemed. That's, okay, Eric and Chris and Lisa and you guys.
Yeah, somebody
okay.
speak to the planning commission.
Yeah, and Valerie, I mean, because if you change it, we might lose it.
It basically,
If I'm off base, that's fine, but I just want to make sure that the second, line, line F, when it said, encourage any, that to me immediately seems like a stark contrast to discourage on the previous line.
But it is that those facilities be within what you're encouraging is where they're located.
So you're saying the rest of that statement sufficiently qualifies?
That's what I think.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
And that's what I'm getting nods from the planning commission that that's what they
Yeah.
think. Yeah.
But thanks for checking.
Yeah, thanks, Greg.
Yes.
Just a couple questions. One, there are a series of technical and grammatical and typo changes that have been made, especially by Bill. How will,
That doesn't count.
yeah, so how will that be forwarded to the planning commission as suggestions, just to clarify, so we
We're
don't?
gonna accept the plan, this is it.
Yeah.
The original
So
plan
we're
needs-
leaving it up to the planning commission and anyone that wants to go to a meeting there to suggest those changes rather, because,
It's up to the chair of the planning commission.
well, through the board and especially your administrator, you put quite a lot of work in, clearing things up.
Hey, we hold the hearing, we approve the plan. If it gets approved, whatever the plan is deficient in or needs to be corrected, that's the planning commission's job, not the select board's.
I don't know, can I ask the administrator? Are you at ease with that? Because, you've got
You
quite
guys,
a few
if they
changes.
approve the plan, it is as printed right
Yeah,
here.
but I understand that, but is
saying
there a
no.
process for you and anyone else to suggest, there are typos in here that I've noted, but you've done a lot of clarification.
Yeah.
That's useful.
This is a living
Yeah.
document,
Yeah.
so once it gets approved, then it's up to the planning commission to address the typos, if they don't want to do that, that's in their domain,
So
not
they
the
could
select board's.
request from the administrator to.
We don't request anything, the chairman of the planning commission requests.
To you, okay.
If I have something you want, I'll give it to you.
Well, I don't want it, I'm
I'm
just
just-
saying, this is a good document as far as I'm concerned, but it's also a draft.
Sure.
And there, okay.
Anything else?
I'm sorry, my second point is that I'm not sure what's to be gained by going through things in the abstract this evening. Very few of us have copies of the plan with us and so on. It might be better held at the planning commission.
The plan
Yeah.
has tentatively been approved. Remember, we have to go into our meeting and we have to have a formal approval, but it's tentatively been approved, okay? So whatever was presented to the select board is now the plan, if the select board votes yes. So that's the way it is. There's no changes, there's nothing. Now, if the planning commission doesn't like it, and they want to change things, or they want to make additions, that's up to the planning commission. It has nothing to do with us.
No, no. You're having a meeting tonight. Whatever you decide you're taking a meeting tonight, you take it to your next meeting.
Right.
That's the only thing that's at the next
Exactly, but if
meeting.
they
The
want
planning
to change
commission
it-
has no say anymore,
No, no.
except to report back to you to say, we love it.
Right, but
Or
if
we
they want
hate
to
it.
make changes after it's approved, it's up to the planning commission. That's all I'm saying.
The next plan?
The next plan.
Yes.
If they want to amend the
Amend
plan.
the plan.
Yes, not,
They can
Yes.
then make
Exactly,
suggestions
can do
to
whatever
you
they
that they
want.
would like this change. Yes, that's true.
in essence, what so far the board has taken a straw vote for is they're going to recommend to the town, and they're going to vote for this plan that was presented to them by this planning commission, period. Okay? That's how it
It's not a
is.
big deal, but there was a process from the beginning that, if there were clarifications, mistakes in numbers and so on, that would be fixed as part of the process.
It's not our problem.
Sorry.
No, it's the plan.
It's not our problem.
Okay. But where is that process gone now? Because it would have been part of the normal process.
Go to the chair of the planning commission.
Okay.
I think you have to let it
Okay.
go here.
Then fine.
Okay, is there anything else that we need to discuss on this, since there's been a straw vote that we accept the plan that was presented originally? Are there any other concerns before we adjourn this hearing? Okay, so we need a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second. Okay, all in favor of adjournment? Say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, so we're adjourned. Thank you for coming for the public hearing. You're welcome to stay and listen to the the meeting now that we had to take place.
You have an agenda for that meeting.
I got it right here.
The second floor plan.
So we've got a substantial change, so,
No, it's not a substantial change.
well, this is as of July 11th.
It is.
We changed the whole plan, so it's a
This is a
substantial change.
substantial change.
So we cannot do this tonight. Because the line of the select board will discuss.
Okay, so
the
we have,
final plan.
do you confirm this, that we have a substantial change?
Yeah. Yeah.
I would say you had more than substantial
Okay.
change. Yeah, you went from one plan that says one thing, going to completely other.
So,
Yeah, I think you should.
But we have to vote now, the select board has to vote.
That they want this to be the plan
Plan.
for the next year.
That's my point, yes, right. Okay? So what we need a motion to adopt the agenda as presented for the Thursday Select Board meeting.
So moved.
Where's the meeting? It's the meeting.
Can we have quiet, please?
Yeah,
Yes,
please.
please, we
This
got a
is-
meeting.
This is a Select Board meeting. If you want to talk, please leave the room. Thank you. We have we need a motion to adopt the agenda of the special meeting of the Select Board on Thursday, October 17th, at the Grafton School.
So moved.
Okay, we moved that. Second. Any opposed? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, okay, all right. So now we have to deal with the straw vote that was taken to return, to adopt the plan that was originally given to the Select Board on February, whatever the date is. Do we have any other?
February 4th, first.
Yeah. Do we have any discussion by the Select Board members?
You need a motion before you have discussion.
No, well, okay, I guess we need a motion, but really, we have a straw vote, but I guess technically you need a motion we need a motion to accept the original version of the town
Need a
plan.
motion.
I need a motion.
Yes.
To accept that. Somebody want to make that motion?
So moved. So moved.
Okay, second?
Second.
All right, so we have a discussion. Any discussion?
You heard my feelings.
Yeah, I'm not happy. I think there's things in this plan here that I am totally opposed with. I think the plan does not do justice to the town. A few of us had a meeting with the CEO of the Wyndham Foundation over certain other items that they were concerned about, and one of the concerns they had is they said the plan does not, it falls short of promoting growth in the town. Basically what it does, it short circuits the town to basically, it stifles the growth, and that's what the plan says, and I agree. Because part of the plan says, we want to have growth, and the other part of the plan says, no, we really don't want growth. We don't want traffic, we don't want this. There's a lot of things in this plan, look, you know how I'm going to vote, so it doesn't make any difference, but I think it's a tragedy that this plan is going to be adopted by this organization. That's my feeling.
If we're to respond to this, I'd like to think that with the potential future input that I tried to put in my motion, and I couldn't, that moving forward with the plan through amended versions of it, that these thoughts and difficult situations here that Joe is bringing up, and I don't argue it and fully, but I think that hopefully the Planning Commission now can move forward and make the appropriate changes that will satisfy more members, certainly of the board and of the public out there. I'm just thinking, and hopefully that the Planning Commission can make those changes.
Anybody on the board have any comments?
I agree with what Stan said. I think, as I said before, I think the plan is, can be changed all the time with the need, to meet the needs of the town. If the Wyndham Foundation is looking for more growth economically, then it's up to us to put that in the plan.
Valerie, you had your hand up?
Yes, I'm going to defer to Bob first, though, if that's okay.
I just wanted
He has
a
to say.
clarification, since I was at this meeting that Joe referred to. My perception of that meeting was our discussion was that the plan doesn't even mention by name, for instance, the Grafton Village Cheese Company. There was no acknowledgement of the importance of the Wyndham Foundation to the town. I don't have the same memory of it was restricting growth. I just don't have the same memory of that, but I don't have any notes with me, but that's not my memory of the plan, of the meeting.
And I don't think that we should be particularly looking at the Wyndham Foundation to that should be part of the board, it should be part of the town as a whole. The planning commission, the board, and the other organizations in town should all be looking in that direction.
Any other comments?
Carolyn's got her hand up.
Yes.
I just wanted to say that the planning commission will welcome suggestions to the town plan regarding that, because we do want to support growth in the town, and there was no question of stifling growth and no intention to leave the Wyndham Foundation out. So I think if the Wyndham Foundation wants to send us a letter or come to a meeting, or you want to send us specific suggestions, we're thinking of this as a living document that will get updated regularly now, rather than every 8 years, just one big thing. And so I heard no discussion at the planning commission that discouraged growth or participation by the Wyndham Foundation, so I think we welcome it, if that assuages your concerns at all.
One of the issues is going to be for future growth, the water, the two water issues that we're just had the committee for, septic and water supply. As I understand it, the information they generated shows that we're in pretty good shape for right now, for our demand and our quality. Our treatment on site is pretty good for what we currently have. The next question in my mind is, what happens when you try to grow the town? You know, where is the future water supply? Where is the future wastewater treatment? And to me, that's an issue that the planning commission should be looking at,
Yep,
is how do we grow that?
I agree. I think, as for tonight, Joe, I don't disagree with anything you said, but I think it is imperative for this board to make sure that we do have a plan in effect. The planning commission document, which I voted for, was a compromise document. No one was 100% satisfied with it who voted for it. I think it's a starting point, and we can move forward from there.
Any other comments? All right, so we have a motion on the floor, so let's take a formal vote. All in favor of the motion to accept the original plan submitted by the planning commission, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
No. Okay. Meeting adjourned, I guess. Someone have a...
No, you gotta set it.
Oh, yeah, that's right. We have to set the next hearing, which is
As soon as you can set it, it's the 7th.
November 7th.
And I can run the ad tomorrow in the paper.
Okay, so somebody make a motion, we'll do that?
Make a motion, the next hearing is November 7th.
Okay, second?
Second.
Okay, discussion? None?
Where will it be?
Here? Do we need it, can we have it at the school, office, Bill, you think?
I would prefer to school.
School? Okay. All right,
You
so,
can have it wherever you want.
Have you already checked the availability of
If
the
this
school?
is available, I've already
Okay.
Okay, 6 p.m. school.
all right, so all in
It's
favor?
so much easier up there.
Aye.
Aye.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay.
Up there or
I'd
here?
like to say one thing.
Well, I don't know, what'd you guys decide?
Yeah.
School, but I thought you just said up there.
I prefer to have it up there.
So would I,
That's
that's
my
my
thought. There
point.
isn't gonna be 1,000 people turn out, I
So,
don't
can we
think.
have it up there?
We can.
That's what I would prefer.
Me too, but I thought you were saying it
I
had
thought
to
you
be-
wanted to have it here.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking you
Oh,
said
no,
too.
no, let's have it up
I
there.
don't like it.
Yeah, okay.
I mean, tonight I almost didn't get in. I didn't think we were having meetings.
Yeah, okay. So.
So town garage.
Town garage.
6 p.m.
On November 7th, 6 p.m.
Okay.
I'd like to say one more thing before the meeting is over. Just remember, we have a special town meeting coming up on the 17th of November, I think it is, 14th of
Following
November.
week. It's a week later.
Yep.
Technically, I don't know whether we can, we can't, but I would love to see somebody cancel that damn thing. It's a useless meeting. If for some reason it gets adopted, then for any modification of the town plan by the planning commission or anybody else is gonna have to go to an Australian vote. It's gonna be horrendous, so I don't know how we can stop it. We didn't call it, the town did. If there's a way, I would encourage it, because if it does get passed, it's gonna be a disaster. That's my comments. So, okay, thank you for coming.
We gotta, did we adjourn?
Yeah,